to a multidisciplinary team. From that year, we spun off a startup called Privy Medical, and it's basically a home hemorrhoid treatment for patients who are suffering from bleeding and pain from hemorrhoids. We got FDA approved in 2018. Now we got it's in China basically. We got Chinese FDA approved just last year, and it's in market and finished first in human trials there. The following year, I was involved in another startup, Jagami, which is basically a Grab nurse in Singapore. That came out from a hackathon. And lastly, in 2019, together with other clinicians, we came up with a co-working space called Catalyst. And it's the reason why we wanted to do that was because we saw a gap between the clinical world and the industry and the academic world. And we wanted to find ways for the two worlds to kind of meet through events such as webinars like this. We hold hackathons, we hold workshops. So Catalyst is, it's still ongoing. It's right next at SGH campus. So my last role now is that I just joined Duke and US as faculty together with David and CTED in the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And my role there is to come up, we're doing a program to basically train young doctors, the medical students, the residents, to train them to be clinician innovators. So that's kind of how I'm involved,
Yeah, I do not know whether how Rena manages everything, and is a very a passionate mother, as well. So she is a woman of many interests and many talents, but definitely, a mover and shaker in the field of medtech here in Singapore, and contributing to the ecosystem. Last but not least, we'd like to invite Tommy to introduce himself. And this is not complete unless you get a VC on your panel, right? Because this is where entrepreneurs like Arena and I will spend a lot of time trying to convince people like Tommy to part with their money, to give us the fuel to hire good people and continue doing the work that we do. So Tommy, over to you for introduction. Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello to all the other panelists as well. Very nice to be here and to see everyone on a Saturday afternoon. I think have to start this introduction by a caveat. I am the least educated person here, I think, in amongst this panel. So we'll do my best to keep up. Hello, everyone. My name is Tommy. I invest into early stage companies here on behalf of Vulcan Capital, which is the family office of Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. We are a venture fund first, so we invest into Series A, seed investments, and once, or at least, but we do differ by being longer term investors and run a permanent capital vehicle structure here. One thing that's unique about us, the returns we generate go into philanthropy, principally the areas that Paul Allen had cared about when he was alive. For example, we invest a lot of money into conservation, as community and ocean health. We set up shop here about 2 years ago and have been relatively active. We've done about 8 investments to date and continue to deploy into the markets and focus on Southeast Asia. Healthcare is a sector that we've spent quite a bit of time in. We've got 1 investment here so far called Knowledge Genetics in the genomic space. Globally, we've done a number across the healthcare space, and we continue to be actively sourcing. It's very good to have a panel like this. I think, Chun, as you rightly pointed out, you've probably spoken to more VC and investors than you probably would need to. But hopefully we can give a little bit of an insight here and share a little bit around how we look at companies and the market today.
Thank you, Tommy. A great panel. Really excited to be moderating this session here. And while the audience here gets warmed up with the chat function below, I'll just also announce that this session is being recorded, but it's going to be circulated only to a very narrow audience, especially those people who are based in Ann Arbor and are in the middle of that are at, I think there is about 3:15 a.m. for them right now, so they've requested for this recording. So so just know that it is not going to be widely circulated. So just for your information, right? Now I'm going to just start off with a question more directed at David and Rena, and both of you are from an academic institution, Duke NUS, and Rena, you're also associated with the National Cancer Center Singapore and SingHealth. Now, how do you spin off a company, right? From Duke NUS, for instance, right? Because the audience over here is like, some of them are in healthcare, some of them are not, right? So they hear a lot of stuff about healthcare in the newspapers, like seems to be a booming sector. Over the last couple of months, you see the establishment of Sanofi manufacturing over here in vaccine. Thermo Fisher is going to do a lot more of stuff here, and but then spinning off companies like the one that you mentioned, Rena. Maybe you can share your experience first about spinning off, and then later on we'll get David to give the policy statement about how it's actually supposed to be done.
I mean, from the healthcare, institution and academic side of things, David will probably give a better answer on how to actually spin off. But my experience is that what we've done, for example, with Privy and with Privy mainly is to basically license the property IP basically out to the startup and for the person to kind of continue to bring it forward to commercialization. But what we're trying to do in the healthcare institution here, I can only speak for SingHealth and Duke NUS, is that we're trying to drive needs-driven innovation. And that's kind of why us as a healthcare institution and clinicians are important in the sense that how do you identify a real big unmet clinical need instead of a technology-driven kind of innovation. So this is kind of what we need to teach the clinician innovators, is trying to figure out how do you actually identify that need? Is there a good market size for this? Is this something that the end users, the patients, the surgeons, the clinicians will actually want to use before you actually take on and identify a solution or technology to solve the unmet clinical need? So in our institution side of things, we are doing a lot of needs-driven technology development. And then, yes, spinning off startups, it's kind of something that usually what we do is to license it off to a company outside or an MNC or something.
Yeah. Thanks, Rena. David, your perspective? Yeah.
Okay, maybe thanks, Rena. I just provide some more like a general practice of how the university technology will be commercialized. So I work for CTAD, so we manage the intellectual property license and spin-off company here. So when innovative research is conducted at an institute like Duke US, so if we find something novel, patentable, then normally our office will prosecute a patent to protect the intellectual property. So that's normally the first step. And then after the IP get protected, and we also help the faculty to get some funding like grants, product development grants, to move the project forward, to move the product development going forward. And then we normally go to looking for an industrial partner to get the products to the market. So because we are like education institutions, so we are looking for collaboration with industrial partner to move the products to marketplace. That could be a license, okay? The license could be to establish the company, like big pharma, like Pfizer, Merck, or it could be to a startup company. So disadvantage or the challenge for academic technologies is normally it's too early in the product development. So big pharma, they are very conservative. They don't want to take a risk. That's why we often license or create a spin-off company and license technology to spin-off company. And spin-off company can focus on product development. They don't have to do like a basic research, like in academic institutes. They can focus on product development. and move the project forward, then they can either do everything by themselves to move the products to market, or they can license again to a bigger company like a big pharma. So that's normally the process of how the technology get commercialized from academic institution. That's just a general process. So I will just stop here to see if there are any comments or any questions.
Yeah. So what happens is that the government invests in its R&D, whether it's in Duke NUS, in NUS, or some place like A-Star. So because the people are paid salaries, the research scientists are paid salaries, and they do the work. So the intellectual property belongs to the institution. So anybody who wants to have access to this intellectual property, which is an asset of the institution, will negotiate with people like David, right? To say, like, Rena negotiated the licensing for Privy. I negotiated my license to start Immunoscape with A-Star. Said these are the terms. These are the group of us who want to license it into our company, and we want to continue running the company. So there will be these negotiations, and there will be a terms, right? Whether it's upfront payment, royalty payment, and that kind of thing. If we make money, we'll give you the money, right? Part of that money. So this is how that works, right? Now, so since intellectual property is actually so important, I'm just going to get Tommy to comment on this, right? When you evaluate a startup and then you are thinking about investing in it, and you have invested in quite an early phase company called Nala Genetics, right? What do you look for in that company? IP is probably one of them, and then what else do you look for, Tommy? Yeah.
Got it. I think before I jump in there, just to double click a little bit on what Reina had mentioned earlier around the niche-driven philosophy. Really, what we do look for or look out for is basically at the early stages, trying to make sure that this is not technology looking for a market or use case. In many ways, I do want to flip that question back to both you and Reina in terms of when you made that decision to license a certain technology from A-Star, right? What was the aha moment for you? And in many ways, right, packaging that aha moment, finding a narrative, and then really understanding if you have a unique selling point, competitive advantage in deploying that technology into a certain market, into a certain use case, is how a VC at the early days tries to untangle whether there's an opportunity in front of us or not.
Yeah. Very, very good. Rena, why don't you go first? Always ladies first, right? Then I'll go.
I can speak for Privy, and Privy was a very different kind of. We didn't license technology that was already created from A-Star. It was Privy literally came off the Singapore Stanford Biodesign Fellowship, where the four of us who started the program came up with the idea. And because, the four of us, the program is under A-Star, so whatever we invented during that fellowship belonged to, the IP basically belonged to A-Star. So basically what we did was that we registered a company, we licensed off our share of the IP into that company to raise private funding, basically. So we had a mix. For the funding wise, the good thing about me being a clinician in the public sector here in Singapore is that we have access to a lot of public equity-free kind of funding here. And so so the main reason why we made the decision to spin off a startup and license it off to that startup was when we hit that point where we needed private funding. So, yeah.
So Tommy, to answer your question, my aha moment came, when I found out that the scientists in A-Star has $1 million collaboration per year with pharma companies. To me, that's validation. So and a commercial guy like me, that is a revenue, not a research collaboration grant. So that was a no-brainer for me when I saw it, right? But the earlier startup company I worked on was a little bit more difficult. It was a bioprocessing technology that I need to build an instrument as a proof of concept, and then bring that instrument and productization further down the pathway. And and while I'm building that instrument, I'm going around talking to pharma companies to see whether they want to do the antibody purification using my instrument. So that whole process is not easy to manage. So different technologies, different productization pathways, different commercialization models. So these are the things that entrepreneurs who are keen in this space will have to grapple with the technology and the business models associated with this for value capture. Yeah. So good stuff. I'm not seeing anybody keying in on the chat. So I'm just going to keep asking until you guys are more warmed up to get into the chat. Now, back to Rena and David, right? In your experience, David, when you are negotiating licensing agreements, or Rena, when you're seeing the people that you observe in the Catalyst, your incubator, what are the kind of people that companies? I mean, are they all clinicians? Are they all PhDs? Or do you have people who are a little bit left field, right? A business person or something, right? They do not have any background in biotech or medtech coming and joining this sector. How do they get in? Yeah. Rena first and David. Yeah.
Honest, I think in Singapore and the ecosystem here, a lot of the projects and the companies that people running it basically are more active, either they're engineers, they're technical people, or they're business people. Okay, the clinicians in Singapore, again, I can't say for everybody, but compared to, for example, Silicon Valley, where we were trained in Stanford, the clinicians here tend to be more risk averse. Everyone, their priority is really clinical work. So to have a clinician come out, and for example, like myself, I don't even dare to call myself an entrepreneur. I'm actually still a surgeon. My main job is still surgery. I'm still in clinical practice. I'm not taking the risk, right, to quit my surgical job to run my startups myself. And I have a reason for that. But basically, the clinicians here tend to be more risk averse. So a lot of the people running the stuff, I see are mainly PhDs, the engineers, the technical people, and the business people. That's to answer your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Rena. How about your observation, David? Yeah.
So in my role here, so normally the people who are interested in the Duke US technology, normally or generally are in the academic technology, are either licensee or investors. So so licensee, like the industry partner, they're looking for product pipelines, so that they come to academic institutes to license potential products to beef up their pipeline and beef up their competitive position in the market. So that's one. Another is like investor, like Tommy. So they are looking for investment opportunity, so they can help us to create a spin-up company and then grow and have financial return. So that's two major purposes: strategic purpose or financial purpose. So, but for the business people, there is some other avenue for the technology commercialization. So besides the license, you can also, some business partner also approach us for collaboration, for research collaboration. It's maybe not a license, directly licensed, just a research collaboration. They have some research program, we have some research programs, so we can collaborate with each other with the potential of creating new products. So that's just, it's about a very high level summary is how we commercialize technology and what potential partner we are dealing daily.
No, Tommy, just now, thank you, David, and thank you, Rena. David, just now you speak, you echoed what Rena said about the need to have a market fit, right, for the technology and for a product you're developing. But when you're investing, right, what do you hope to see in the team that you're investing in, right? Because Rena and David talk about different people who might be licensing our technology and then spinning off companies. But Tommy, what is your sort of an ideal team, right, that you're gonna put money in? Yeah.
That's always the number one question. Because at the end of the day, what we look out for, and when the technology has a market, so you have product market fit, or you have potential product market fit, then the technology also needs a team, right? It's often starts with the founders, but regardless of whether this is in the healthcare space or not, but it's quite an acute observation in healthcare. It's not that easy to put a team around you, right? So you tend to have people who understand the technical or fundamentals of whatever you're trying to roll out. You understand the market, but it can sometimes be quite esoteric, right? And to get people to understand what you do is the first step. And especially, I speak on behalf of startups, not so much the big corporates who have their own ways to de-risk their investments. But from a startup perspective, you're trying to recruit talent and resources to join you on what is potentially or with a very high chance of failure, right? So there's almost two sort of barriers to entry there for early founders or early teams to come to market with, and it's never easy. But the teams who are able to demonstrate, number one, that you have the technical fundamentals. So in the case of Nanogenetics, the two founders had very deep experience. They both were at the Genome Institute of Singapore before coming out on their own, and then spent a lot of time in their space, right? I think 90% of that company are PhDs, so infinitely smarter than their investors. But that's step one. Step two then is going back to the original point around convincing other people to take that leap of faith, is where we also key in all these investors. Certainly we are providers of capital. We are not going to help you run a business. We want to be able to see that you have the ability to bring other people, other like-minded people on board the journey as well.
Thank you, Tommy, and I'll also share here my experience spinning off Immunoscape, a company I co-founded with 3 other scientists. So the other 3 scientists are PhDs and scientists from Singapore Immunology Network from A*STAR. So they are all scientists, and I'm the only business person from the Ross Business School. I wore this especially for today. So a business person and then 3 other scientists combining these capabilities and expertise to bring the company forward was what eventually convinced some of the investors to put in those money. So I have a question from Derek Khan, right? And Derek says that if there are some of the people here are not investors, but they want to get involved in the startups, can they get involved as a board member, for example, right? So I'm gonna venture an answer and then invite anybody to answer this as well. I'm in the middle of a independent board director search, because my VC told me it's a good idea. It's important that you get independent board directors to beef up your decision making in the board. So love that. I know I hired a headhunter, and then we are sourcing for these board directors in the US, because we are trying to break into the US market. Hope that the board director will bring along network and connections. So definitely, what's the network that I want? I want to have biotech connections. I want to have connections to biopharma senior executives. I want to have connections into the venture capitalists in the US. So when I interview board members, I'm looking for some of these things, and then maybe they can also advise me on the strategy. So these are the qualities I look for in a board director. However, earlier stage companies may not have the same kind of requirement as I would, and then their requirement for a board director is a little bit different. But I must say, early stage companies, the VCs end up being board members rather than somebody from the outside, like an independent board director. So David, you have also startup experience in the US, and then Tommy, you also have got board directors that you put into some of the companies as well. Maybe both of you to comment. David first, and then Tommy. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I did my own startup company, so I provide just some my 2 cents.
Yes.
So the talents a startup lead depends on the stage. For a very early stage, it's normally just a founder come together and push the project forward. So for my own startup company, Xera Orthopedics, so it's just 2 Michigan MBS classmates. So myself and another Michigan MBS classmate, we did it together. But we have a common background. We had MD, both had MD education, so we are in the medical field. That's why we want to pursue the orthopedics to design Asian-specific hip implants. So that's why we come together. So at the beginning, it's mostly just a founder. But when the company is established, so that's expanded, that more talent will be needed. So regulatory, engineering, maybe some finance we can outsource, of course, but for example, a quality system. So you don't have to have like a biomedical background to get involved with a startup company.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Tommy? Yeah.
Well, it starts with maybe places like this, right? And it certainly starts with curiosity. One of the most interesting things being in VC is that we tend to be swimming a lot in what we call sort of the unknown quadrant. And every opportunity, the interesting ones at least, tend to come up from that area, right? And you just don't know what's going to come across your desk any given day, and that's something that's super fascinating. But we're not people who start as experts in a certain field, right? The founders do, and the onus is on us as individuals, whether you're a VC or not, to unpack the curiosity. I would say though that within sort of the investment world, and just taking that lens for a minute, a VC tends to within sort of the VC space, there's a bit more open source. If you're naturally inclined, or you think there's an area that's interesting, there's probably a ton of podcasts, a ton of blogs, a ton of resources that are going to be available to you, even within our alumni network, right? To get that initial sort of one-on-one going. And from there, the paths, the channels will start to become a little bit more clear, even within our underwriting process, starting to ask the right questions, finding the right resources, people like Chun, people like Raina, like David, that you can make a quick phone call into, have a coffee, and bring it up to sort of your 201. From there, it takes on a more specialized path within healthcare. But I'd say that from a VC standpoint, from an early stage standpoint, folks are out there. Folks are willing to share their knowledge with you, and are willing to bring you in if you're truly inclined to pursue a certain area, within this space.
Thank you, Tommy, and and I just I just sent everyone in the chat this thing called Angel Central. Is a link. This Angel Central is started, Rina is smiling because she knows the founders of the Angel Central. Both of them are Michigan alum here in Singapore. They coach angel investors in Singapore on how to invest in startups, right? And it doesn't have to be in healthcare. They also do it in IT. In fact, they do more in IT. But they also have a component on healthcare. I've spoken in some of the webinars before. But again, friendly parties, also fellow Wolverines. So reach out to Dershing and Shouting at Angel Central, and they can also guide you as to how you can get involved, right, in startup scene in Singapore. Very vibrant here. So the next question is more for Rina, and this is from Daniel Tan. And he says here, he has the impression that VCs require founding teams to put in 100% of their professional time into running and growing the tech company, right? How can a balance be found, especially for clinicians who want to continue their surgical careers and still grow and scale the company's business? And in fact, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought says that incubate your technology in the institution as long as possible, because you can still get government R&D funding, you can still get grant money, right? Incubate it longer, because then you don't have to get VC funding, which is sometimes challenging. You're too early. The other school of thought says bring out the technology quickly, then if it's so good, you can get external funding and you can run faster. So, Rina, which school of thought you think you go for, and what kind of response would you give to Daniel for finding that balance about the clinicians who want to, who might have a good idea? Yeah.
I think to answer your question about which school of thought, I think it really depends on the technology, right? And also the appetite of the founders. I feel to be honest with you, a lot of the technology that comes out of the institution and the schools tend to go on the latter path, where you try to de-risk it as much as possible, stay in the public healthcare system, use up the maximum public grants that you can go. But I'm not sure if any of you have actually tried the public grants. Is that the downside is that it's very slow. It's like it takes months or even years sometimes to kind of get the money. Whereas if you ask Tommy for money, he'll just put it in your bank account maybe tomorrow, and you can start doing your work then, right? So I like to think about it more as the type of technology, probably something that's a little bit more simple. I mean, in the medtech side of things, if it's a class 1, class 2 device, most of the time it might be better and faster because time is money, right? To kind of move more into the private sector kind of path. But if it's a little bit more high tech, for example, it's an implantable or it's a biotech where you need to do a lot of lab work, you can do more of the public side and kind of like de-risk it a little bit before spinning it off and then balancing it off on both sides. But to answer Daniel's question about this, I mean, you're right. I think VCs tend to actually require their founders to actually put in 100% of your professional time. And in the Singapore ecosystem, a lot of the doctors would not actually quit their jobs to their clinical work to actually do this. Again, I mentioned I've seen a lot of people in the US, fellow residents and stuff that actually found a great technology. For example, the Da Vinci robot, right? The guy was he basically quit as a resident and did the robotic company full time, but it's not very common here in Singapore. And so a lot of the doctors here, the surgeons, they come in more as a key opinion leader, medical advisor kind of role to the founders who are doing it full time. And also, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but clinicians here tend to take on more of the advisory and chief medical officer, which doesn't really need a full-time kind of.
And I'm just going to add to what Rina has said. My co-founder Evan Newell, who is the inventor of the technology, remained in A-Star as in academia, whereas the three of us, his postdoc. I said, Evan, while you remain in academia, then one of your guys in the lab must come out full time. So his postdoc is with us full time, and then Alexandra, the COO, is full time. So 3 of the 4 co-founders came out. Evan remains a chairman of a scientific advisory board. Now he has relocated to Fred Hutch Cancer Institute in Seattle. It works out very well. You don't need to have the clinician or the co-founder of the technology being with you full time. I mean, it's worked out for Rina, it's worked out for Immunoscape. So there are ways around this. Yep. So yeah, go ahead, Rina.
It didn't work out for Rina. I'm still full-time surgeon.
Yes.
This is all part-time. Yeah. I think we lost Tommy though. Tommy's coming back in.
Okay. Let me make sure that his connection may have dropped. So actually, this is at the 3:45 mark. So I just want to keep to my promise that we will open up this section of the dialogue to open up into the floor. So you just need to key in something on your chat, or you can just unmute yourself and then ask the question, whatever works for you, and then you can ask the panel any question. Yeah, go ahead. The floor. Anyone? I think that could be Jacinto, right? Ines, Jacinto. You have a question that you keyed in. Why don't you ask it yourself? Because I have I think it's a fairly long one. So we will invite Ines Jacinto. I might have pronounced your name wrongly.
No, it's okay. I can understand it. Thank you. Yeah, I understand that the question is quite long, but putting it simply, so part of the job that I've just started is to reach out to people in big companies that I've never met before. And I want to know what is like the best way to approach, because I've like tried to go on webinars and try to engage, but then I don't know if like LinkedIn is a good first step. How should we approach people nowadays?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ines Jacinto, the context is that she's interning in a medtech consultant, as a medtech consultant in the NUS lab. And I think she's probably doing the business development function and reaching out to companies. So this is something that's very challenging to do in this time, or COVID time like this. I have an entire business development team in the US, based in San Francisco and San Diego, reaching out to US decision makers. And it's really difficult because we are trying to reach out to them. In the past, we could go to medical conferences and meet them. But these days, virtual conferences, it's kind of difficult to chance upon people in corridors and stuff. So we've been working a lot with LinkedIn. But the challenge, of course, is that they don't know you and difficult for them to reply. So we always will try to find a warm link to the people that you are trying to reach out to. So a tough job that you have gotten as an intern in the NUS lab, but definitely keep going, because many of these startup companies need that kind of linkages to further their development. Yeah, thank you.
I think to add to that is, for example, this is exactly why the reason we started Catalyst, right? It's to kind of a meeting place to meet people who are within this healthcare innovation ecosystem locally and regionally. And more importantly for us clinicians who really wanted to do this, is to how do you link startups like yourself or projects from the outside world to good clinicians. So we like to think of ourselves a little bit like we're matchmaking to clinicians that we feel are friendly and open to ideas. Because again, it doesn't mean that the professors who are white-haired and all, they always come for all the talks and lectures in your medical conferences, that they would be the best people to CMOs or to co-develop products with you. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we started Catalyst. So just to add on, in Catalyst, we're also trying this speed dating event between clinicians and startups. So for example, we're doing one with the Division of Medicine in SGH. So for example, we are going to do a respiratory night where we'll bring in like 10 respiratory physicians in the department, and we'll bring in 5 startups in the respiratory space. So the startups will actually get to meet and exchange name cards with 15 clinicians. The clinicians will get to know 5 startups that are in their space. So that's kind of something that we are trying to do there as well.
Tommy, you came back in time to answer the next question. So as a VC, Uma asked this question. As a VC, how do you ensure that the IP is strong and there is a freedom to practice? Yeah.
I think that's a very, very good question. Sometimes it's also a question of whether do you file for an IP or not. Or do you continue to work in the area that you're working on without necessarily bringing this to the surface, so to shine some light on it at the onset, right? I think the way that we would think about it as a VC, you certainly will want to get the right your IPs filed in the right jurisdictions, if you think that that's the right thing to do. But you, as a startup, as a business, you don't necessarily want to hide behind your IP as well, right? You must have the ability to execute a certain go-to-market, a certain, or to bring your product to market, irrespective of whether the IPs are in place or not, because even if they are, somebody else could come along and do something similar, if not necessarily the same, and do better because they identified a better product market fit. They have been working with better partners. They have identified a better channel to distribute. And at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, and we are believers that good product wins, but you also have to accept that in many ways, your product becomes a hygiene factor, and the IP is simply a part of that, and you have to continually innovate, continually bring something interesting, continually bring something that people want to buy to the market in order to stay ahead, right? So yes, I realize that there's two sort of views there. IP is important, filing is important, getting your lawyers on top of it is important, but that's not the be all and end all when it comes to running a business.
Yeah. So thank you, Tommy. And that's why we have good lawyers like YJ Chung calling in from Korea, because, IP law is very important for startups. Yeah. And hopefully we can get him also at some point of time to comment on the vibrant startup scene in Korea. But we do work with IP lawyers, and for Immunoscape, the company I run, we file for IP for the things that we discover. For example, we are looking for immune cells that kill cancer cells. So if we can find the right T cell receptor type of immune cell, and we can find the genetic code on that, we want to be able to patent it. Not so easy because you want to make sure that you're not patenting naturally occurring substance. Yeah, that there's some engineering that goes on behind it. But certain things that you do not want to patent. For example, our machine learning algorithm that we do not want to patent, because when you patent, you have to actually then file and tell the patent office what exactly that you do that is special, and you're revealing all your secret sauce. And then with a programming language, people can do a little bit of that tweak and change, and then do the workaround. So you do not want to tell people that workaround. So for those things, we keep it as a know-how, secret sauce, a bit like the Coca-Cola recipe and ingredient. So those things we don't patent. Yeah. So that's thanks, Tommy, for that answer. No, David, just now Rena was sharing with us what some of the audience over here can, who want to learn more, can participate in the Catalyst activities and some of the workshops and stuff. For you, David, at the Duke NUS Tech Transfer Office, CTAD, you also have other avenues and resources, right? I think that you have a program called the Entrepreneur in Residence, and there could be other stuff that you have available for the audience here. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some like EIR program, Entrepreneur in Residence EIR programs. So normally we can engage industry, very experienced industry professional to help to, for example, work out the business case for a spin-off company, and connect the spin-off company with a potential licensee and potential investors, and guide the product development and fundraising. So we do have an EIR program. Besides EIR, we also have some we are working with some other venture capital to provide product development grants, but normally that's open to Duke US faculty, staff, or research fellow. So it's more like a technology commercialization grants, although at a small amount. So to help, it's more like a gap funding. So that's basically some additional program in our CTAD besides just a license or patent.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, David, for sharing those resources. And actually, we have some international audience that called in. and some of my friends from the region. I'm not sure whether Vikram, you want to introduce yourself. I know that this is a surprise. Yeah. Hi, Vikram. Thank you for calling in from India, Vikram. Yeah.
Hello, Chun. I'm trying to get my video started. Got my Michigan logo in the background, and
nice. Fantastic. Yeah.
Like what Tommy said, I'm amongst the least educated. Most folks here have PhDs, doctorate degrees, business degrees. I just have an engineering degree.
No. Vikram is an entrepreneur, and he invests in healthcare companies in India and globally. Right. So Vikram is a learned investor. Yeah.
What I have learned to do at the end of the day is tell people a story.
Yes.
I'm sure Tommy's heard a lot of stories. I mean, you walk into your office going, what story can I spin today? At the end of the day. So this is what I tell entrepreneurs often. It's not what you have, but what story you can spin at the end of the day. So you've got to reach out to people. So your marketing effort starts on day one itself.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot of things. I mean, I can see how Singapore is ahead of a lot of countries, and I'm tempted to believe that it may be even a tad ahead of the United States. Just my general observation today from talking to the folks out here and getting feedbacks about how you folks are doing things. I mean, for example, the angelcentral.co website that you put up was very informative, and that is something that I have not seen in other parts of the world. And a lot of Indian companies actually love Singapore because of how they protect IP. In fact, two of the companies that I'm working with, one of them happens to be with a fellow Michigan alum. We're going to be moving that company to Singapore just to protect our IP. And it makes transactions all that much more easier. So those are my 2 cents that I'd have for everybody.
Thank you, Vikram. And I have actually met a couple of VCs in Singapore who are actually intent on investing not in Singapore, but companies in India and companies in Indonesia. So because these are fairly large markets, so there are some mandates of certain VCs that are primarily focused on these two very, very large markets based out of Singapore. But definitely, the impact that the technology can make in some of these very large markets can be phenomenal. So thank you, Vikram, for participating and coming onto our call. Just wonder whether YJ is up for sharing. We have a friend from Thailand, Mongkon Vanit. Also, yeah. So some friends from the region. Or anybody with any questions, because I think we were going to be taking 1 or 2 more questions. And also, Shavapas, is also online here. Yeah, so some of the friends from the region calling in as well. So really appreciate it. Yeah, and Patarachai as well. Yeah, from Thailand, I believe. Yeah, Andrew Wijono calling in from believe should be Indonesia, or you are based in Singapore, I'm not sure. Yep. So any one of you, and any other questions, guys, we can take 1 or 2 more questions and before we end off the formal part of the today's webinar, because time is also running short here. But thank you, our friends from the region, for calling in.
Okay, maybe I have a question for you. I like how you're evolving this into a more clubhouse style forum.
You're right. You're right.
One of the benefits, I think, of having grown up here in Singapore and is seeing the sort of biotech space evolve. I guess it just dovetails into sort of when we were graduating out of high school. Yes. That A-Star and Biopolis and all those plans were coming into play. And here we are a number of years later. I'm not going to do the math there. What are some of your learnings, right? A lot of resources have gone into this space. I think that the pandemic has really, I think, shifted that into a new gear. But what are some of the learnings that you have seen as a practitioner in this space, and having spent time with A-Star, in the past few years that we can take away as as investors or even as participants in this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think thanks Tommy for that question. Right, I think one thing that's very important I see is the ability of the Singapore government to provide a base level funding. That base level funding is actually very, very important to keep a community of researchers going strong. Right, I actually visited our regional countries, and I actually saw sparks of innovation in some of these regional countries. But the challenge for some of the regional countries is that the funding fluctuation of the governments in R&D just goes up and down. And imagine if you're a researcher, you get a 3-year funding, and then after that, for the next tranche, the government changes, and then they say, okay, forget it, right? I'm going to cut on R&D. Then suddenly you lost your job. You lost the funding for your salary, right? And then people say, look, this is not a space I will want to enter into, right? And then that's the thing, right? R&D does take time, and you need to provide a core funding that allows a community of researchers and innovators to come through. And actually, for the formation of A-Star is about close to 20, 30 years. And some of these PhDs that have returned are reaching their prime. So I'm pretty optimistic, right? Because there is, we have actually in the first wave taken a lot of international renowned scientists, and then coupled with our very junior people, right? But now, the cohorts are now coming up, and then the universities, and not just the universities, right? The A-Star, and also now the hospitals are doing more. So you can see this wave coming through of doing good science. And even though we are small, but our publications are international, right? And so if you continue to do good science, then you just need good entrepreneurs just to take that step of faith, right, to try, right? And then, but it starts with the foundation of doing very good science. So I think that's what's making the difference for us. And I'm pretty optimistic about the future for this. And so I have really. I don't know whether Riyadi Ghazali is available to say a few words, because Riyadi is my investor in the last round, a friend from Michigan, and then he took the plunge. But there's also hi Riyadi, you can unmute yourself, Riyadi. Good. So
hello, Chun.
Yeah,
Hi, very good to meet.
I met Riyadi first in Shanghai, where he was based. With his family business in Shanghai. He then went to the US, and now he has set up a fund in Singapore with a few friends. And he also has a SPAC, right, in NASDAQ, investing in Southeast Asian companies, right? So Riyadi, you want to turn on your video, and then I think the funding landscape has also improved a lot, right? Tommy, your fund started 2 years ago, right? And Riyadi's fund is starting this year. So Riyadi, on Tommy's question about how this you have been talking to different people over the last 1 year or so, right?
Yes.
What do you think about the this startup scene in Singapore from your observation, and not just in China, US, and Indonesia, but now in Singapore? How do you compare? Yeah.
I think the startup scene in Singapore has progressed has progressed a lot. There are many. I think there are definitely now many interesting companies coming up, in many sectors. Yeah? I mean, healthcare is one of them, and also in the other tech sectors. It's definitely Singapore is indeed becoming a center of innovation, or it already is a center of innovation in Southeast Asia. So one thing I noticed, I guess, is is really multinational. You can meet people from talent from all over the world here, and it's a very good connectivity with the rest of Asia, United States, and also Europe. That's a strength. Yeah. One of the I think condition that we need to kind of look into is like sometimes the scale of the market to see like the market access, and also that is something to look for in terms of the size of market, right?
Perfect. Thank you, Reddy, for that optimistic analysis. Now, I'm going to just invite Tim Ringrose to say a few things. Tim just messaged me. Tim is from the University of Michigan, right? He's in charge of the executive program, and he has asked me, Chun, can you link me up to some of the tech people here? Because the university has also observed in Asia, right? Tech is actually growing phenomenally. So Tim is again, why don't you unmute and Tim and introduce yourself a little bit, and then maybe you can do a quick pitch before we end off the entire call, the formal part of it. Yeah, Tim.
Well, thank you, Chun. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually joining you from Beijing this afternoon. I'm based, though, out of the Michigan regional office in Hong Kong, and wish I could be with you, Chun. It's been great to be part of this afternoon session. Just very briefly, folks, Michigan is committed to this region, and we're here for the long term. And I shared with Chun this past week that tech is of particular interest to us in this region. I've just found it fascinating the last hour. Chun, you've done a great job of facilitating this and bringing in everyone. So thank you for inviting me to join in. And look, I would love to connect with any of you that are on the call. I hope to be able to start traveling again. At the moment, doing travel here in China, but certainly look forward to seeing people in the region, and would like to see how we can add value and support both the larger and the smaller players, the new players here in tech. And yeah, thank you again, Chun. Been great to join you this afternoon.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. So with that, last words, I would like to end the formal part of the call. I'd like to thank the panelists, David, Rena, and Tommy, for the exciting exchange of views about commercialization of technology here in Singapore, and giving some their own perspective about how this can be done, whether you are in healthcare or not. And so want to just end this formal part of it. And I know that on Saturday afternoon in Singapore, many people send their kids to tuition center and all these other stuff that errands that you have to run. So go ahead and do whatever you need to do. The panelists, some of us have agreed to stay on a little bit longer to have a more informal chat, a bit like what Tommy says, the clubhouse style, right? I like to have it close and intimate. So if some of you would like to stay behind just to have a short chat, we're going to hang on for a few more minutes. But just feel free to exit the Zoom if you have to go. But thank you everyone for coming in. Thank you for my regional friends for calling in all the way from Japan, from India, from Korea, from Indonesia, all over Beijing, Tim. And just thank you all. Thailand, I have seen a few friends from Thailand as well. Thank you so much. We're just gonna hang around a bit longer. And for others, please feel free to put on your video, put on your unmute yourself, and we can do a clubhouse chat for a little bit. Yeah. Hi, Cheng To.
Hey, hi.
Hi, how are you doing, man? Yeah. Hey, Sharon Xie. Sharon, where are you calling in from? Haven't seen you for a while, Sharon.
Chun. Hey, I just came back from US. I'm still stuck in the quarantine.
Okay, you're in the hotel. Okay.
Yes, I'm in a hotel for 21 days. So yeah, I'll be out next week.
You're in healthcare, right, Sharon? What are you doing in the US in healthcare?
Yeah, currently I'm working with Genentech, and I'm actually leaving Genentech in a couple of weeks. I'm joining a private equity fund. Oh,
wow. In the US or in Singapore?
In the US. I'm going back to US in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Tell us, the biotech scene in, are you in healthcare in PE?
Yes, it's going to be in healthcare, but it's more on like the provider side.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see you, Chun. It's been a while.
Good. Yeah, good to chat. 07, that's when Tommy and Rena were graduated. Sharon probably more 03, no,
2011.
2011. Okay, sorry, my bad. She's very young, younger than me. Sorry, but from reference, I'm the old guy. Hi, Henry. thank you for coming on early. Yep. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Andrew. Yep. Not sure whether they are Adi from Indonesia. There you go. Hi, Andrew. Are you calling in from Singapore or calling in from Indonesia? Yeah. Can't hear you. Sorry, Andrew. Yeah.
Oh, from Singapore.
Okay, cool. Right. Andrew, are you in healthcare? Yeah.
Actually, I'm not.
Okay.
So it's more of a learning session for me.
Cool. Yeah.
So what for the panelists, right? What would you suggest for someone who never involved in healthcare? Like my experience is in banking, and what's your advice if keen to enter the industry?
I can take that first. I also didn't have a healthcare background before looking into this space, but one of the nice things about healthcare is that we are a customer, right? And starting there, understanding the customer journey, I think all of us are very familiar with the frustrations of the customer journey. Raina had pointed earlier to sort of just understanding a needs-based philosophy. I'm really glad to hear that, right? Because if you go into any other healthcare system outside of Singapore, you'll probably find a less focused approach, and so using some of these initial pieces, right? So for me, always taking a customer first view, then trying to double click on what people like Raina are trying to accomplish in their careers, but also in their ecosystems, and then connecting the dots. Think of it as we have a fresh pair of eyes, and that I think always helps us, regardless of whatever sector that we happen to be looking at any given point in time.
And finance is always very important, Andrew. It's almost like the lifeblood of a startup company, right? So if you are able to go in to a group of clinicians or startup founders and said, look, I think I know a few people who might be interested in a project, or I can help you in those areas, that they are always gonna be keen to have a conversation with you. Yeah.
Chun, and maybe just wondering, because I think both of your story with Rina is all from A-Star and IP. Is there any other ways in terms of like getting startup up and running, just like from having something that is already there but doesn't need to be IP, but we can make it cheaper and more robust in terms of the products? Will that like person like Tommy interested to know more, or he has to be an IP related stuff to get the funding, basically?
Tommy, yours.
I think there's as we had sort of I think alluded to earlier, there are things that are IP related, and there are things that can put it know-how related. One of the things that I think will be the sort of defining catalyst of this pandemic is the ability to bring therapeutics to market a lot faster. And there's a lot of variables that go into that, but principally, for example, with FDA clearances, getting that cleared faster, right? Sounds very basic, but it took a pandemic for us to bring mRNA therapeutics to market.
Right.
And so in sort of a very simple way, a lot of players who can operate in that space and bring something to market faster, you still need a technical partner, right? You still need some level of IP in whatever you're developing. But a big part of the race is in speed, right? And bringing things to market faster, and that's how a non-practitioner, if you will, can get involved. And Chun had talked about this earlier in his business too. Software is becoming a huge part of healthcare, right? And that's where folks like engineers now have the ability to bring their own practices in machine learning, for example, right, into healthcare. There are a ton of companies now helping to build out pill plus solutions, so apps on top of pills to help you along your own journey, or to monitor your intake of your medication or the impact of your medication after you start taking them, or in things like home care, so hospital at home type of setups, which are all largely software based, right? So bottom line is that many different ways to skin a cat. There are many different ways for folks who are not from the healthcare system to get involved. If you believe that you found a certain angle within the healthcare world that you want to be involved in.
Okay, all right, got it.
Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, Tim, are you calling in from KL? Are you in Singapore?
I'm calling in from KL.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I was interested in this because just during COVID, somehow I ended up in the healthcare space.
No kidding.
So I was doing my consulting work. Then flights were grounded.
Yep.
My company had no business.
Yep.
So I went on my own kind of healthcare journey, where I changed my diet. Right?
Yes.
And
You
I
have
lost
lost a lot of
25
weight.
kilos. I went
You
off
lost
all my
a lot.
medication.
Yeah.
So anyways, we started, I have a startup in Malaysia now, focusing on nutrition to treat chronic conditions.
Okay.
Diabetes.
Right? So I was listening to Tommy and others because we don't necessarily have a solution that is about, deep tech or IP. It's about bringing all the right pieces together and executing.
Cool.
Right? So we're in the middle of talking to investors and others, but you here, if you have any advisors, we're looking for smart people in this space that could advise us, or within the Michigan or other networks. So
we have a food tech movement here in Singapore that's actually quite strong, right? And under Singapore Food Agency, SFA, and they are adapting a lot of the biotechnologies that apply into food. So, for example, they are growing crab meat from cells. All right, but this is of course a bit like the impossible meat.
More like Memphis meat, so growing cell-based substitutes.
Yeah, and then there are of course some who are more on the clinical side that are doing diet, and we have a huge cohort called the Gusto. Rena might be familiar with the Gusto cohort, where KK Hospital track nutrition of the pregnant ladies all the way until the child is like 9 or 10 years old, and then to see what they feed the kids and how to get them to perform better even in school. So this is a big thing for Singapore parents. Cool. So definitely, Tim, we can chat offline on some of these connections that I can link you up with. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Righty ho. So we have come into the 20th minute mark. I just probably take one last question before we wrap this up. Okay, I think we have done quite a bit of chatting this afternoon. But again, want to thank Rena, David, and Tommy for being such a gracious panel speakers over here, and thank you all for hanging around and chatting with us a little bit more. Good to see you guys, Sharon and Tim. Right, take care, Andrew. Right, bye bye.
Thanks a lot, Sharon. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.